Welcome to tonight's Blue Table Talk. I'm your host, Deborah Jones, and we have an exciting gentleman here tonight that we're going to talk to. And before I introduce him, I need to take care of a little housekeeping. So, you guys, I'm always talking about COVID, and you know that it's still out there. It hasn't gone anywhere yet, but we're hoping that it does, especially during summertime. Because we're tired of staying in, and we need to get out and just, be free again. And I know that some of you guys don't wear masks. I know that. But we definitely have to keep our distance. We definitely have to be cautious of what we're doing. We definitely have to wash our hands. We definitely have to wear a mask. So that's normal right now. That's a normalcy right now. So that's what we need to do. So with that being said, do what the CDC says do, because there are a lot of people out here, over 900 and some thousand people who have already died from COVID, and not only that, over about so many people have it, and because they had their vaccine, it's a good thing because they're not affected as bad as others who have not had it. So go ahead and get vaccinated. You have really three, because you have a booster behind that second vaccine, and so that you can be safe for yourself and for others. You might have someone around you that have underlying illness, and with that being said, supposedly you around them and they catch COVID. Well, who knows what happened? And so let's go ahead and do what the CDC says. Take care. Wear your mask. Wash your hands. Keep your distance. All right. So tonight we have on with us Kristen Manuel. Hi, Kristen. Kristen Manuel Hayes. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me.
I see you have Kristen Manuel up there, so I know you always say Kristen Manuel Hayes. So I don't know how to.
It's Christian. I go Christian Manuel is the easiest, but on the ballot it's Christian Manuel Hayes. Yes.
Okay. All right then. So we have Kristen Manuel tonight, and I want to say hello to my viewers. If you're out there, hello to you guys. And we're gonna have Kristen introduce herself, because a lot of you guys don't even know who Kristen Manuel is. And so he's going to introduce himself, and after we introduce ourselves, then we'll start interviewing him, asking him questions, and just throwing it out there. So, Kristen, how are you? And let's go ahead with your introduction.
Well, first off, my name is Christian Manuel. I'm originally from Port Arthur, Texas. My family are the Savoys out of Port Arthur, and I've been working for State Representative Joe Deshotel for the last 17 years and 4 months. I started with him when I was 18 years old. I was going to school at Houston Tillotson in Austin for about a semester, and 2 semesters. And he gave me an opportunity to work in the legislature. I started there, and then I moved back to the area right after that, and have just been involved heavily in the legislature, been involved with my family's Martin Luther King support group since I was in diapers, because it's 36 years old and I'm 36 years old. I have 6 siblings, and one of my biggest passions is the legislator, because I've been doing it for so long and growing up there as from a teenager to an adult, seeing the things that people talk about that they don't have a full grasp of understanding has always been great for me to be able to share. As people say, how the sausage is made, but I more like to say to share with people what power they actually hold within their government if they pay attention, because I think it's just so important. So I'm endorsed by my boss, Joe Deshotel. I'm endorsed by the AFL-CIO. PPAC has endorsed me. I have some charter schools endorsements. So it's just been a really good campaign. I'm continuing moving my family, my team. So yeah, it's been great. And that's
so
a little bit.
So you say that Joe Destel inspired you to run. Am I right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so people could say, why don't you run for this office? Why don't you do this? But what really, really and truly inspired you to run after he mentioned to you to run for office? What really inspired you?
It was that whole conversation. What he said to me was really important. And he said, Christian, what happens if I die tomorrow? He said, we always say life is not promised. I mean, tomorrow's not promised to anyone, but we always think we're just going to be here. We're going to be here. And he said, District 22, they deserve more. They deserve someone who actually understands the process. And I thought about it and I realized something that he said that he didn't say was, Every single person for the last 23 years that have voted for Rep Desotel, they voted for him to teach a young black boy from Port Arthur to be his mentor, to teach him about the legislative process. And one of the things that I hold near and dear to my heart is it was in 2019 we finally had 13 black chief of staffs out of 181 members in both the House and the Senate. It took us 170 years to get 13 black chief of staffs, which a chief of staff is basically directly underneath the boss. That's the job everybody wants because it's you have power, you are in the meetings, you're everywhere, and there's only 13 of us.
Mm-hmm.
And representation matters, especially when it comes from our area. We always hear about the bad that happens in our area, but what about the boy, the girl, the man, the woman who comes from their community, who never left, who went to work and came back and went to work and came back? And I realized I owe my county more than I can ever repay them because I would never be able to have this experience if people didn't trust in him. So to he much is given, much is expected. And so it just reminded me that I I come from a family of service and I wanted to be of service to people in a way that I know would continue to help them. And that was really what pushed me to do it.
So since you were his right hand or personal assistant or whatever you're gonna call it, why weren't you as visible as you should have been or whatever?
You know, I get that question a lot, and I always tell people that was what the job entailed. So for me to be visible would be for me to outshine my boss, but the community elected Representative Deshotel.
Correct.
And for me to do my job properly, that was for me to be behind the scenes. I'm going to use, for example, Ronnie Manuel was behind the scenes. No one knew who he was until he ran for office. And then President Obama came out, and all of a sudden, Democrats in Illinois were like, yeah, we got to get him in office. President Obama's behind him. So my job was to be behind the scenes. It was not to be visible. It was to make sure that everything that was coming out of the office
Mm-hmm.
was Desotel, wasn't Christian, wasn't any other staff member. And that's something that I'm proud of, that some people have seen me, but they may not know who I am. So if I can do my job for 17 years properly, then that means I can do my job properly as a state rep.
Right. So walk me through your time management. How what kind of time management do you have?
So prioritizing what actually needs to be done first. So
Mhm.
for instance, I'll just use what I've done even in the legislature, which is the same thing I brought with me here to the campaign is when you get in the morning, if you have committee hearings, but you also have bills that you need to lay out, well, you have to prioritize to make sure that your committee hearing information is done correctly because your boss is going to be sitting on that committee. And while he's sitting there making sure that all of your stuff is done the night before or first thing in the morning, because things do change, as soon as you drop that off, you also hand off information to someone else and say, I need you to do this and do this, knowing how to delegate and not micromanage. And that's something that I try to do is make sure that what I can do and what I should be doing, I'm doing, and what I need help and assistance with, I'm getting help and assistance and asking people to update me on what's been going on. And I brought that with me, making sure that if I can be on one thing, I can say, yeah, I can be on this, but I can't be on it for a long time. You know, I appreciate it, being very thankful for it, and still making sure that I'm keeping my word.
So would you bring some people with you on your journey, or what are you like keep whatever you have there? How would that how that work?
You mean from transitioning from one office to the next?
Mhm.
No, it's I've had different people from different areas that have come and helped me on the campaign. Um, One thing I will say is a lot. If you're on a state staff or you're still working, a lot of times you're not able. You're not using your vacation to run for office, and also as well as me running for office, giving people a fresh perspective and putting new people in the community. If we keep recycling the same people,
Right,
no one else is getting a chance to do anything else, and that's something that I want to be a part of as well because that's what happened for me.
right. So your platform said that you would fight for jobs, secure funding for improvement to area infrastructure. I'm sorry. Also be an advocate for the enhancement to public education for teachers and students. Do you care to elaborate on that subject?
Yes, I'd love to. I'll go with my very first.
I'm an educator. I retired one, but I'm an educator.
I was going to go to that one first. That's actually my favorite one. And the reason that's one of my favorite is because too often we blame teachers, we blame parents, we blame school officials for what the legislator is messing up. And then when we fix a little something, we ask for a pat on the back. We use teachers as political pawns. We use retired teachers as political pawns. For instance, when there was the walkout for voting rights, everyone got mad with Democrats because they said, "Oh, they're stopping teachers from getting a 13th or 14th check." Well, that was just a lie. In reality, what actually happened was all it took was the governor, the lieutenant governor, and the Speaker of the House to go to a meeting and to take all of that money that teachers wanted and were promised and just change it, move the budget, get it out of the way. Education is so important because we have children in it who have learning disabilities, dyslexia, autism, Down syndrome, Asperger's syndrome. I'm dyslexic. I was one of the children who was written off because I couldn't read, and so when I would get angry, it just, oh, he doesn't know anything. He's not smart. When I have a nephew and a godson who are autistic, and it's easy to just want to say, oh, something's wrong with these children. I want to make sure that when we're looking at our education plan, that we're not just focused on how much money a school district is getting and what kind of programs they're getting. I want to make sure that we're using those adequate dollars properly and making sure that we're doing such things as saying, hey, Miss Savoy, your son Christian, he's dyslexic. Well, which form of dyslexia does he have? If we give teachers those tools to know how to teach that dyslexic child how they need to learn, and then we are teaching those children and those parents, how many children probably would not be angry? How many children wouldn't have to feel that they have to be violent because they don't want to be picked on? They don't want to feel afraid when they go to school because they don't know what the paragraph says, or because as they're reading, the words move off of the page, or because the words lighten up. I mean, there's so many different forms. And the same thing with autism. I want to make sure that we are being partners with teachers and parents and students and making sure that we're listening to what they need rather than what we say that they need. And then also pushing that agenda forward to make sure that these children feel as normal, as happy, and as perfect as they are. Because there's nothing wrong with a child with a learning disability. They're just like every single person. They just need a little help. And I tell people this: if you know what rocket science is, I guarantee you there's one thing that rocket scientist needs help with when it comes to some form of education. They may not know everything about history. They may not know everything about English. They may know everything about math, or they may know everything about science, but they still are lacking in an area where they need someone to help them. And that's something that I want to continue to drive home, is that everyone just needs a little helping hand. When it comes to infrastructure, flood infrastructure, or we call flood mitigation or coastal restoration,
Right.
that's so important to me because, for one, the area that we live in, I've been fortunate enough where a lot of people don't understand, well, why do we even have this issue? Why is it that we have drainage districts? We have this district. I constantly see them digging up the roads to put pipes in Beaumont over 10 years ago. Why is it that we're still flooding? Well, there's so many different factors that happen when it comes to it. And one of those factors is the legislator. And what that is you have legislators who live in other parts of the state. They have fires, they have snow, they have drought. And we pay for that with our taxes, or I'm
Right.
sorry, with our insurance. But when it
Yeah.
comes to hurricanes, they don't want to pay for us
Pay for
because
it. Right.
we're living the Benihana dream. We're down here sipping Mai Tais, laying out at the beach, having this warm Jamaican weather. And that's so far from the fact that it's saddening. And one of the things I tell people is in Port Arthur, we had flooding there was really nothing that we could do. We had the most recorded rainfall in human history that happened in Port Arthur. And then you had Conroe and you had Houston, who had all of this flooding. So the water was gushing down. The rivers weren't wide enough because over the accumulation of years, you had mud, you had dirt, you had all kinds of trash, everything that was just accumulating, making those rivers smaller and smaller and smaller. And so then there's only one way waters just come flying through. Well, when Port Arthur flooded, some people went to Beaumont for those of us who stayed. And then we get to Beaumont, and what happened? Water cut off. Well, why would the water cut off if there wasn't that kind of flooding in Beaumont and Port Arthur? And what we see what happened with the sewage system was, which is a part of coastal restoration and flood mitigation, is We need to make sure that we are adequately giving cities the money that they need. There was no reason for Beaumont's system to fall down because they weren't properly funded. And that's not an attack at the city government. That's more an attack at our state government, making sure that we're giving the resources to areas that are vulnerable, giving
Right.
the message to people, telling them every time there's a hurricane and we shut down, we don't lose a couple of $1 million. We don't lose 100 million. We lose hundreds of billions of dollars in industry a day. And how can we ask businesses to come to our area so that we don't stay stagnant if we can't protect the businesses that we currently have here right now? We can do more. We have to do more. And that's something that I want to push. And when it comes to healthcare, you were just talking about it, which is most important. And I'll say it like this: healthcare is not a Democrat or a Republican or an independent. Healthcare is something that everyone needs. And when you get sick, you don't care if that person voted for President Hillary Clinton, or sorry, for Hillary Clinton, or President Biden, or President George W. Bush. You don't
Right.
care who they voted for.
You
You
trying
just
to speak something into existence, huh? Hillary Clinton.
you
Okay.
don't care who that person is. You just want them to take care of you because they took an oath. And
Yeah.
we are the fastest growing state in the union. And I like to say that, I'm going to say that again. We're the fastest growing state in the union. And I say union and not country because we are a union.
Hmm.
We are the United States. And what we have to recognize when we're looking at our healthcare is that right now we don't have the numbers to change to a full Medicaid expansion, which would be great. But we do have the numbers, and we have pushed the needle so much closer to what is called an 1115 waiver. And the 1115 waiver is basically a waiver that is a small version of Medicaid expansion that they've done in about 36 other states, a lot of them conservative, that could estimate put about 4.2 more million Texans on insurance. We are the fastest growing, but we have the most, we're the 42nd when it comes to uninsured people. That's not sad. That's not bad. That's cruel. That's inhumane that we have people who need health care and we're not giving it to them. And too often, I've seen it since I was 19 years old, that the legislator will pat themselves on the back and say, we gave 100,000 children chips. But then you look back and you say, but you just took off 150,000 children 2 years ago. So you didn't make progress. You just basically kind of fixed somewhat of an error. And we need to do better when it comes to that. I mean, I could just go on all day. I mean, there's one that's Ban the Box, which is near and dear. We've been working on that one actually for about the last 6 to 8 years, and we finally almost got into that very, 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 very last push this session. And it basically, what it says is that if you were convicted of a crime, now if it's a statute crime, like if you are trying to go work at a bank and you robbed a bank, that doesn't apply. If there's certain jobs where you cannot have committed certain crimes, that won't apply. But if for like possession charges or distribution charges, if you were 18, 25, and it's been 10 or 15 years, and we're still punishing you as though you can't grow, then that means you can never grow because we're never allowing you to grow. And what this bill will do is say that you can ask that question, have you ever committed a felony? But we want you to ask it on the last interview question to give people an opportunity to get to know that person. And then that way you can find out what's happened in their life, to see if they are this 18-year-old, 19-year-old hoodlum, or if they're actually a progressive adult who has sat there and said, I made an error. I just want to be able to take care of my family, to take care of myself, to be a part of my community, because we're just shunning people out and we're not giving them any incentive to want to be a part of their community. And then we're always labeling them as a bad actor. And that's another bill that I'm really adamant about. So that's some of the things right there.
Well, you're talking about the healthcare bill.
Mhm.
We're discussing includes huge taxes on business to force them to provide more health in for their employees, as well as a whole set of mandates telling health in companies
Mhm.
who they cover and what they have to cover them for. This is an enormous increase of cost for business and insurance. Have you ever considered how they're going to pay for all of this and whether they would even be able to pay for it? And how many of these companies will go out of business or lay off more workers after the government forcibly increase their expenses?
Yes, I think that the idea of it is great. Like a lot of legislation, it's great to want to think about covering everyone, but we do at the end of the day have to think of the cost. And I think that what we can do is we can find ways to carve out, especially for smaller businesses, because we know that if we don't have smaller businesses, then we really don't have an economy. And I
Mhm.
think that we have to make sure that we're negotiating with the federal government, explaining to them what our needs are instead of constantly arguing. I think that's one of the problems that I've always seen is federal government sends you the money, tells you what to do with it, and if you don't want to apply with it, well, you just don't get anything. And I think there needs to be ways that we need to be able to maybe ask for what would be called a resolution, because we as a state can't just force the federal government to do it, but we can pass resolutions that would ask the federal government to be able to look at these resolutions and say, this is what Texas is proposing that you allow us to be able to do with these federal dollars instead of just doing exactly what you tell us to do. These
Mhm.
are the areas that we adequately need these in to save our businesses, to save our healthcare, to properly fund everything. But also, we as the state have to also realize that when we don't accept federal dollars for healthcare, which is what we don't do, we leave millions of dollars on the table that ends up going to other states. We have to also take a responsibility for that. So we can't just blame one area when we could have fixed certain areas for years and we haven't because we just want to have a lot of fighting when it's kind of a mixture of both the federal and the state. And I think we need to just do better with that and think about the real human cost and the financial cost to people.
Because then you know the insurance is gonna go up, regardless.
Absolutely.
It's going
Mhm.
up. So I mean, it's gonna go up, and people don't have the jobs to even pay it. You feel what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Okay, so let me talk to my viewers. Thank you for coming on tonight. I appreciate you stopping by and listen to Christian Manuel. He's running for a state representative. And if you have questions that you need to ask or want to ask him, please feel free to go ahead and ask him the question. Put it on the comment page. I would throw it to him, and he would answer the question. We have thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Carolyn. And thank you, Beverly. So Kathy Wingate has a question. She said, it's one thing, no, she doesn't have a question, statement. It's one thing to give us money, but they are not applying the money where it needs to be used the most.
Absolutely. So I will say that's part of the appropriations process that we constantly have problems with, and and I completely agree with you. I tell people if you ever want to understand how things get funded,
Mhm.
it really comes down to your representation, the party that is in control, and really, if you want to look at it from the point of view of take your income and take if it's your spouse's, your friend, whoever you're joining your incomes with, and then you put it together, and then you take your bills and their bills, and then you put it on a spreadsheet, and then you decide who gets what bills to be paid. Well, it's kind of easier if you're in a relationship because you can say, well, we can do this, we can't do this. But imagine if you have 150 other people sitting in a room and everybody wants pools of money. And so it ends up becoming who can work out what deal to get what things. And that's literally how appropriations are funded. And so unfortunately, a lot of times what happened is just like what Miss Kathy said, is that people will tell you, take this money or and do exactly what I say, or we won't give you any money. And in
Mhm.
a weird way, if someone was to tell you that in real life with your tax dollars, that's the thing that's funny that we forget. It's not the government's money, it's your money. You pay taxes. And we have to find ways to better, to me, what I would like to do, even though that would be a really uphill battle, but what I would like to do is to have each district submit their budgets to the federal government or to to the state government and say, these are the things that we're actually needing and to fully because we kind of do it now, but really to put them in a forefront of saying this is what we need and sending that to the federal government so that they really understand where areas where the state can't fund or hasn't been funding, that the federal government can come in. And I think when we do things like that, it could help more and it will help more because it'll also give citizen input on what actually needs to be done.
She also says, what is your plans as it relates to criminal justice reform?
Well, that I actually can say. I wish I had the bill numbers with me. I actually, under Rep. Despotel, the last session I filed, it was three different pieces of criminal justice reform and also officer reform. Now, I'm not anti-police, as I told people, as I've told a couple of people. I wasn't around for Burn Baby Burn, but I do know that that was very detrimental to the cause. just as defund the police.
Mhm.
I think that we need to be making sure that we're saying reallocation, and also with criminal justice reform, going to that as well, is that we need to start making sure that the legislator is at the time where things need to be. We
Mhm.
are so far behind on where our laws need to be, such as we love to talk about marijuana. Now, I'm not one who, not just because it's illegal and I just don't do it, but it's something that it's just not for me. When we talk about marijuana reform, what we don't understand is that well, some people, we're falling under laws that were built upon racism, just as the reason why cocaine is illegal. Not to be offensive, but cocaine is illegal because it was considered cocaine crazed Negro syndrome. And it made black men who took cocaine so sexually aroused that they wanted to rape white women. Well, that's just a form of stereotype and it's inappropriate, but yet we're still having laws
We have those
based
laws, yeah.
on racism. And with criminal justice, what I would like to do is to continue to push that needle to make sure that we're not only decriminalizing such things as marijuana. Now, I'm not saying I think everyone should be doing drugs or doing heroin, things of that sort. Absolutely not. But when we're doing things such as decriminalizing marijuana, we need to make sure that we're doing a few steps. We need to make sure that people who were incarcerated for those laws before, that we're not just giving them a second chance, but we're giving them an actual path to clearing their records. Since we know that those laws shouldn't have been illegal in the first place. We need to make sure that if we're going to allow such things as people to sell marijuana in our state, we need to be making sure that those people can apply for licenses. Because right now, under most state laws, if you ever have any crimes committed for that, you can't even hold a license. So then it ends up taking from the community of people who you've incarcerated. Now you give them no means to be able to be a part of a system because of what was unjustly a law because of racism. I also want to make sure that we are giving police officers the understanding that you are a part of the community, but the community also needs to understand that the police are a part of them. We have to coexist with each other. And with criminal justice reform, I think that there are so many things. One I would like to do, which is not really necessarily criminal justice reform, but I had a bill this session that said if you are a peace officer and you go on Facebook or Instagram or wherever you go and you say such things that are racist, like we had with our own sheriff here, people who would say such horrible things about her, call her such despicable, horrible names. Well, you shouldn't be a peace officer because you've proven that you cannot protect everyone. Because if you're racist and you think people are lesser than you, why would you protect them? Why would you give them the same kind of protection that you would give to someone who looks like you or to that person? Uh,
Right.
so, and also doing things to make sure that we're reviewing, to make sure that officers who do bad things, and again, I want to say those officers, because not all officers are bad. Those officers that do bad things, they can't just quit and go to another police force and then commit other crimes. So I'd like to do things like that as well with criminal justice as well as with police reform, but doing it in a way that we are not attacking each other, but helping each other to make a better community.
So you think it's okay to go ahead and legalize marijuana?
I think it is. And the reason I say that is just kind of with a scientific point of view is people who have cancer, people who have certain illnesses, we found out that that is something that has helped them. That's something that has allowed people to be able to survive, to be able to eat so they don't lose a lot of weight. And also we know now that if we were looking at things from the lens we have now, that alcohol would actually be the thing that would be illegal and not marijuana because alcohol is more severe. You can't just cold turkey get off of alcohol if you're a severe alcoholic because you could kill yourself. You don't necessarily intentionally mean to, but it's something that could happen to you. I think that we also know that it causes cirrhosis of the liver. It can cause heart disease. It causes weight gain. It causes depression. So we have to look at things where they are now and what we know with the information we have now. And I think that with the information we have now, we can do better.
Um, it's from another viewer, Cheryl Chambers. She says, "Good evening. I was good evening, Cheryl. How are you? I was reading about some states looking at raising teachers' pay. Do you propose raising teachers' pay? Do you think it can help solve the teachers' shortage?"
I think that we should raise pay, but what I would like to do personally a little bit more, one thing that I would like to see is we do an incentive program for teachers who are teaching in underperforming districts right now, and they can get their student loans waived if they stay for 10 years. What I would like to see if we can do state programs with our money to say, how about we give you a raise? But also, if you are in a school district that is underperforming and you stay for those 10 years, how about we give you an incentive to buy a house and we pay 50% of it because you've been there long enough. You're giving back to the community. You're educating doctors, lawyers, other
That,
teachers,
I'm gonna say
politicians, construction workers, people who want to teach at trade schools, librarians, police officers. I'm going to stop going up. People who train dogs. I mean, you're teaching people the essentials to survive in a world. So
that.
why not give them the incentive to say, hey, you know what? You've been here 10 years. Your student loans are waived off, are paid off. You bought a home. It was $80,000. You have about maybe 60,000. The state's going to give you 40 or $50,000. What an incentive to give a teacher that to tell her you don't have to leave. You can stay here. Your home is paid off. Your student loans are paid off. Now we can ask you to stay longer because also when we keep teachers, because we always talk about bringing teachers in and bringing teachers in. But like my mother, for instance, she's a retired teacher, but she went back to work to go do more with other children. We need to make sure that we're giving incentive to teachers who are here as well as new teachers for a reason to stay. Because the longer that you have a teacher in an area, she doesn't just become just that teacher. Now she's your community activist because a parent can say, like with my mother, oh, Miss Terry, I know her. I'm glad that my son is in her class. She knows how to take care of my kids. She knows I can talk to her. I can call her. So I think we should do more than just throw money at teachers. We need to give them incentives to thank them for literally raising generations of children and generations of people who will end up making tons of money. And I think we can do it and we should do it.
Yeah. Let's talk. Let's go to the students.
Mhm.
They're still taking this the state the Texas State of Assessment test, the STAR test. What is your take on doing away with it completely?
I
Because
think
every year they'll say something like this gonna be it for the STAR test. No more STAR test next year, and then they bring it right back, and then or if they rename it. So what is your take on that?
I think that the STAR testing is unfair. And the reason I say that the STAR test is unfair is, and I'll just say it as a simple way, if you're in an underperforming district where we know we have some students who have books that are 5, 6, 4, 2 years old, and then you have students who are in a more affluent area where their books are currently up to date, but you're having a standardized test based upon what students should be learning, even though you're not giving them all the same information. Also, because going back to what I was saying before, we're not adequately making sure that students are being taught how they need to be taught. We're so quick to just say, well, if you have learning disability, you can't take the test. But there are other children who aren't diagnosed who shouldn't be, by those standards, taking tests. I think we need to be basing them on a child's grades. We need to be basing them on where the curriculum is. And we can do those things without putting pressures on teachers. Because in the end of the day, no one wants to blame that student that doesn't graduate. We want to blame a teacher. But then also, how many teachers have to stop their class for one reason or another? How many teachers have undue stresses that they have to also deal with? We expect them to be superheroes, but then we treat them as though they should be indebted to us for working for us. And I think that's where the STAR testing comes in, where it's unfair, is that we're not on an equal playing field when it comes to a standardized test. And I think it's a way kind of to, it can humiliate not just students and teachers, but I think whole areas, because it's easy to say, oh, well, they don't know anything. They're not that intelligent. And that's so far from the fact.
I've always said that people in legislation, they aren't educators. They've never been educators. They don't understand educators, but yet and still they throw everything at them
Mhm.
and expect them to master whatever they throw at them. The commissioner or
And the
whatever.
ones that are educators, they are often listened to,
Yeah,
which is unfortunate. Like Dr. Allen out of Houston. So
right,
have that happen.
right, and it's sad because, like you said earlier, how did a doctor get to be a doctor? How did the president get to be the president? You see what I'm saying? They had to have some teacher to teach them all the from beginning to get where they are today.
How
You
did
see?
we get a computer to be able to talk from different places without a
Right,
teacher? So yeah,
right.
it's vastly important.
So is legislation similar to the Federal Employee Free Choice Act, which allows to farm by the majority of workers just signing a card instead of the secret vote were proposed to the next legislative? Would you support or oppose such a bill?
I would support anything that local areas want. I'm for unions. I think unions are a great thing. I think it's a way for people to organize. And I think for some people, their organization, they want to do things differently. And what I've always said when it comes for me, when it comes to labor issues or people unionizing or having these kind of things, are seeing what people actually want and what they would prefer,
Mm-hmm.
have that conversation. Because I think, like we were saying earlier, too many people just assume they know what's actually happening. But even me, like I said, I have 17 years of legislative experience. I can talk about the legislator all day, but you wouldn't appreciate me coming to you telling you how to be a teacher, telling you, hey, this is how you should do your lesson plan. You'd be like, what is who where did he come from? You know, you can read it in a book, but that doesn't mean that it's very cut and dry.
Right. What is House Bill 3? Tell us about House Bill 3 and what does it entail?
So this was House Bill 3 that was passed in 2019, the school reform. Okay. So that one was monumental because we completely changed education, how we
Mm.
were funding it, property taxes, incentives that we were giving to teachers. Now, unfortunately, because of COVID, we weren't able to see fully what the effect could be for schools and school districts. Now we're starting to see, and we know in some areas that it could help, in some areas it would do more. But since a lot of it is still based upon testing, and a lot of students were actually not able to take testing because of COVID. And we're going to have a group of children who are going to be behind on
Right.
learning. Well, it, it's a good idea, but of course, as they say, the best laid plans of mice and men. And so I think that we have to see at this point really what's happening, of where we are and how can we move forward with what we currently have right now.
Mm. What do you plan to accomplish in your first year in office?
So, well, for us, we only get 140 days unless they
Right.
call it the
Right.
legislative session. And
That's gonna be your first year.
yes, my first year. What I would like to do is, one thing I'd like to do that's kind of a passion of mine is making sure that we're continuously having such bills as, I'm sorry, for like sex trafficking, for family and domestic violence, because I think that we love to tout, well, we love our women and our children, and they're our future of our generation. But as soon as a woman is put in a situation where she has to flee an abusive partner, or she's homeless, or you find that child that's been missing and they've been unfortunately sex trafficked, while we are more progressive as far as in where we are moving with laws, Texas has so many, we still are leaving so many people behind. And I want to make sure that these women and children in these families, that they feel protected and know that they're protected by making sure that there is funding, making sure that shelters are adequately funded so that they can feel safe when they're there. I want to also, like us with my platform, trying to continue to push the needle on healthcare and reminding people, hey, in your district, you have just as many people in my district that are uninsured. This is why this bill is good for all of us, not just me in my district. Continuing to show people not just my human costs in my district, but human costs in their district as well.
Hmm.
Of course, with flood mitigation, with storms, want to continue to work with people who are doing that. The good thing for me when it comes to building relationships, of course, we'll have new members and members that have just known me as staff, but I already have relationships on both sides of the house. And I will continue to work on having that, because you'll have committee hearings, working to see about getting committee hearings down here to our area and asking people to hold those publicly so that people from our area don't always have to feel they have to drive 4 to 5 hours just to get there to speak on an issue. And then that also helps us fine tune legislation that'll be coming up.
Hmm. Okay. So tell what do you think about gun control or gun rights?
I believe in both. I think that we need to have gun rights. And I'm not a gun owner. I don't own a gun. I've never owned a gun. But I have family members that are hunters. I have a brother who's a hunter. My boss, Joe Desto, he's a hunter. I think that people should be able to protect themselves. But we also need to have responsible people who know how to use a firearm. And I say it like this: if your teenage child or an adult is driving down the street without a license and they're driving erratically, they're going to get pulled over and they're going to go to jail and they're going to get a ticket because they're driving without a license. Well, if a vehicle we know is dangerous and people die in car accidents and guns are dangerous, we should be making sure that people have guns. But I don't believe in taking people's Second Amendment right from them because of the fact there are a lot of responsible gun owners and there are a lot of people who it's not even just about protection. That's their hobby. They enjoy that. And so I think we should do both and we can do both.
Because the first thing it says, Second Amendment states that we have the right to bear arms.
Right.
That's the first thing it says. So I'm okay with it. I'm okay with it. But we have children with guns,
Right.
and which is wrong. I mean, the age limit was 21 and up. Is that it?
For certain fire, yeah, for like the handheld firearms.
Right, right. But like I say, you have children going, and you still have children going into the schools with guns. That needs. I think that all schools need a what you call that, a shield, where when you walk through, yeah. I think all schools need that, so they'll know what's up. But if you put in that backpack, you probably don't know what's in that backpack.
Or if they leave it in, if they have a car,
Yeah.
or if they leave it someplace on the outside where there aren't. I mean, there's always, if as they say, if someone wants to commit a crime and they're really adamant about it, unfortunately, they're going to at least try it. But I don't think there's anything wrong with hardening schools. But I also think we want to make sure that we are not always giving the wrong impression. But at the same time, we do remember and we do know now that schools are soft targets because of the fact that a lot of schools don't have a lot of security. You don't always have police officers, and it's only certain schools in certain areas that have those. So I think that's one reason that we definitely need gun right laws, making sure people have background check and making sure that people know that they have to be held responsible if they allow someone to take their weapons. Now it's different if someone steals it, but if you are just, if you have a handgun and you just throw it in a drawer in your kitchen and your child takes it, or your neighbor or someone breaks in and takes it, that's not really being a responsible gun owner. But at the same point in time, it's just there's so many different avenues and there's always going to be a road someone's going to splinter on to go right or left. But I think we
Right.
can do a lot of things to protect each other if we're making sure that we're being responsible with such things.
How do you feel about Greg Abbott passing all these bills, especially the voter suppression bill? How do you feel about all that?
Desperation. Desperation, because it is, people love to paint Democrats as saying that we're against voter ID.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell people, well, you can't write a check without, can't cash a check without an ID. You can't buy a car without an ID. Or you shouldn't be buying without an ID.
Right.
You can't get on an airplane without an ID. You have to submit an ID. Democrats have IDs. Yes, there's some people who they've had issues with their IDs because of they were born in another state or they found they were adopted or different things have happened. But the issue that people don't realize that we were having with voter ID was such things as taking out souls to the polls that we tried to work with them on for about 3 months that they wouldn't work with us on. Taking out such things as handing water. What is water going to do to people? So if someone's hot or they're thirsty, we have to say, can you please step out of line so I can give you some water, or else you're going to make us a felon. Or saying that you have to sign affidavits to help your neighbor, or you have to state it. There were a lot of things that were, let's just say it like this. There were a lot of things that we know that we do in the Black community that seem to be targeted specifically. But also, one thing a lot of people didn't know was in the bill was that there was an option in there that said that a judge could overturn an election if they saw there was irregularity. So for instance, if you have a district who the majority of the people, like in our district, 40 some years, they've been voting Democrat. And the person who's been there have been 2 Black men. Well, what if you had someone of another race come in from another party? If that law would pass and you had a sympathetic judge or a judge who just didn't like that person and they found they had evidence right there to say, we're going to overturn that election because it doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to give it back to that. And that person could have legitimately lost. But the only time that they wanted to work with us was once it made news and we left and it was red meat and potatoes and We don't stay here. And I haven't always, but one thing people forget is Republicans did the exact same thing in Oregon, and it didn't make massive news about, I think it was about 8 years ago. They fled their state legislator, but we're the ones that get villainized for it. But I think what it is, honestly, it's just desperation. They know that we have the numbers, and they're trying to do everything to make sure that those numbers stay where they are by disenfranchising people for their vote, because Texas has the most black people in the entire country. We have the most black people in the union, but yet we cannot get them to vote because oh, nothing changes. But if you actually would vote, we
We have
could actually change things because we have the numbers to actually move things, but we just choose not to. And it's not about party affiliation. It's just about what do you believe in? And I've jokingly told people, I said, well, not jokingly, I tell people, to me, the two most important things in life are religion and politics.
hmm
Religion, because no matter if you believe, you don't believe, what you believe in,
you
it,
can't put those two together. You know that, right?
you know what, people say that, but this is the reason that I have a difference of opinion on it. Is I'm the son of a Coast Guard brat. My dad was in the Coast Guard for 33 years, and he told me, he said, "Why is that I can be in the army, I can be in the military, and serve next to people who we have different opinions, but we can fight side by side, and people expect us to be brothers and sisters in arms.
hmm
As a citizen, we expect more from our soldiers than we expect from ourselves." And with politics, with religion, I always tell people, you don't have to talk about it, but you should be realistic and realize this: religion determines how you vote, what you think, what you believe. Even if you have an absence of religion, it still determines what you feel and how you move forward. Politics determines what you can do, when you can do it, if you can do it, where you can do it, anywhere in the universe. That's how people were colonized here, based upon religious feelings of dogma that said that certain people were this, or we should live here, or this is our right to the land. So we're told to not talk about the two things that determine everything that we
Everything.
do in our lives. I think that we need to, as my father told me, we need to be civil, but we also need to realize if you have a conversation with someone to change their mind, and you expect them to see your point of view and believe it, then you've messed up from the start. But if you have that conversation with them to inform them of what your beliefs are, then I think that's something that is where we can move forward. And I just and say this not to be religious, but it's for those of us who believe in Abrahamic faith or any faith. Our faith pretty much calls for us to lead by example. That we
Mm.
should lead with our love. That people should see our religion. Well, sorry, not our religion. They should see our beliefs before they see us, before they know us, because they see how we talk to one another, how we move with one another. So we if we can do those things, I think that we should be able to talk about in a civil society and not be angry and not demonize people. We don't have to agree, but we can have conversations in a respectful way.
One of my viewers said experience may give you content, wisdom, and insight, but it guarantees no drive or motivation. I
Mhm.
rather I rather hire and work with an ambitious leader than
Mhm.
one that simply has experience, wouldn't you?
I understand that question, but I will say that experience in the legislator is actually how you get things done. There are a lot of ambitious legislators who can't pass anything.
Right.
You have a lot of ambitious legislators who all they do is give talks. There was an ambitious legislator named Jonathan Stickman, didn't pass one piece of legislation, but he was all over the news. He was always giving speeches, making videos, and threatening other members, and calling them out in their districts. And there's a lot of members who are great and ambitious, and they don't tell the truth because
hmm
they don't understand the process. Experience for me, and the reason that I'm running on it, not just because I have the experience, is because I actually understand the process. And that means that I would be always realistic with people on saying, well, I can do this, but I want you to know this is where we're coming from. This is the steep hill. And I think sometimes people confuse excitement with meaning that you're going to be a hard worker and you're going to get things done. I prefer to work smart and not hard. I prefer to work by doing things that are going to help people instead of making headlines. And
Mhm.
so for me, that's the reason that I think experience matters more than anything. If that was if experience didn't matter, we wouldn't go to doctors, we wouldn't go to colleges, or we wouldn't go to different places and ask, how long has that mechanic been here? Or we wouldn't keep sending our car to that mechanic or asking for this doctor or making sure our children can get into this certain class with this certain teacher because they've been teaching it so long, they know it like that. But we don't say, well, is the teacher ambitious? Was that teacher going to take that time? Well, the teacher already knows it. You know that teacher is going to be ambitious because they eat, sleep, and breathe it. They can answer all those questions and they can teach it.
And they can teach it. So give me one reason why someone should vote for you.
I'm asking people to vote. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I cut you off.
Oh, because you worked under Joe Desatel. Is that why?
No, that's one of the reasons that I'm using is to show his support for me
Hmm.
with the work that he's seen. If you've ever voted for the Rep Despotel, you know that he's a very quiet person. He works very silently, but he speaks up when he needs to. A lot of people have faith in him, and I'm asking people to see that through my 17 years of working for him, that he's had faith in me. He's seen me work. He's put me in positions to be a legislative strategist. He's put me in a position to make sure that I was able to help my district while he was doing something else. He put me in these positions to be an individual who can do, who was able to do more than what he ever would have dreamed that he would have been able to do. So I'm asking people to vote for me, one, for the experience, two, because I honestly, genuinely love my job. It is it's an honor to serve people. And it's an honor to use the knowledge that you have to serve and to help people's lives get better. And for me, this isn't about a title because, like you said, there's a lot of people in certain parts of the county who didn't even know who I was, but I still did my work. And Rep Desotel kept me for 7 years. I would hope he wouldn't keep me, I'm sorry, for 17 years. And I didn't know anything. I didn't do anything. I didn't help the party. I didn't help him. I'm asking people to see that I did my job for 17 years and I would do the job for them as state representative.
So this kind of this question I'm getting ready to ask you, it kind of spilled over to what you just said. So you have two other opponents that's running
Mhm.
against you. So what distinguishes you from them?
What distinguishes me from them is my experience in the process, being an actual legislative strategist. A lot of people say they know about the process because they read it, but you can't ask them who carried a bill the session before to know who you're going to work with or if that person will work with you. And
Mhm.
that's what I'm bringing to this field is that I can tell you right now who some of the major players are who are going to be on education who are coming back. I can tell you who are going to be some of the major players who are going to be on different committees. And if people think that that doesn't matter, that's when your bills get stuck in committee. That's when you're not able to do anything. And that's when you end up having an ineffective legislator. And that's something that I don't want to be. I want to be an effective legislator. As I say, I don't want to have a great name where everyone has to know that Christian did this and Christian did that. I want to work hard for people. And
Mhm.
and that's the most important thing at the end of the day. In 10, 15 years, you're going to have an entire generation of people who won't even know who Rep Desotel was. Just like there are a lot of people who don't even know who Al Price was, or the fact that Al Price was a pilot and one of the first few black pilots. That
Yeah,
is huge and phenomenal when
yeah,
you think about that. That we had a district that for the last 40 years has been represented by two amazing black men who did a lot for their community
yeah.
and also did a lot to make sure that they brought back money to their district. A lot of, and say this, there are a lot of staffers in Austin who didn't know there is a daycare behind the Capitol for mothers who have children, so they can drop the kids off, and if they want to go see them for lunch breaks, they can come back, and then it stays open a little bit later. That was Representative Al Price who did that from Jefferson County,
Right, right.
District 22. So we have a lot to lose if we have if all we trade for is I need someone who's high energy, who's not going to get things done, because we don't know what it is to suffer until we can't get anything passed.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to thank my viewers for coming on tonight. I appreciate you guys. Thank for the questions that you posed to Kristen tonight. Remember, Kristen is running for state representative District 22, and he's one of the candidates. And Kristen, I appreciate you coming on to Blue Table Talk tonight. Um, uh, I'm gonna tell you, like I tell everybody else, if there's anything that I can do for you during your election, during your time in office, or even election period time, I'm here for you guys.
Thank you so much.
And let me give y'all an announcement before we get off of here. And y'all know it's about the Charlton Paul story documentary. They will talk about us, and the tickets are at https tinyurl.com/4D5KYVJ. Also, you can get them through Ticketmaster. It will be at the Jefferson Theater February 18th, and it's a 1 hour documentary about Charlton Paul, and it's going to be a great show. It's going to be a great show. So after that, it's going to be the Wiz. So go out. The tickets are $6 for adults and $4 for children under 12. So get out there and get those tickets. And it's about Charlton Paul, y'all. They get after me because see, I'm a bulldog. And they get after me about that. But anyway, I am very, I know you have somewhere to go right now, and I am very respectful of people's time. And like I said, I appreciate you for coming on, and I appreciate my viewers. So if there's anything I can do for you guys out there, if I can help somebody as I pass along this way, then you know that my living is not in vain. God bless you, and God keep you is my prayer. Kristen, we'll see you later. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Have a good night.
You too.